let's just backtrack and try and put these things in order. So one thing that I think is really interesting is you talked about we have three different kinds of inhalations that will actually position our diaphragm. And so let's say we want to, I want to get this sound on this phrase, "Cry me a river." How do I, which inhalation or what do I need to think of to get the optimal inhalation for that?
High pitched inhalation, as soon as I would normally say this octave for low inhalation, a little bit higher if so, but depending on whom you are, of course. But mid nasal concha, middle C, and then again high pitched breathing. So it's not a lower, because you're already putting yourself too far from that initial pitch. As I mentioned with he cannot really reach it if he has too high of an onset in his voice. But if you breathe in very highly, like as if it's super needed, or at least you can, also these gestures will of course help. However, you can do it without the gestures. Hi, instantly a much brighter version of myself because of that inhalation and how it's expanding the diaphragm as well.
All right, so how do we inhale high then? Do
So
we
you
do
can do
we
a
think a
smiley
high
breathing.
pitch, or
Yeah.
do we, or what do we do to make a high inhalation?
So you can of course block the lower one by simply smiling. I always start by saying like super like mouse or something like that. Hi. And if you speak right after, you should get a much brighter tone of yourself and you should be a little bit okay. I normally don't speak like that. And the same for the mid one, it's going to be much more as a regular speech pattern. When you do a low one, it's going to give you that low sound for low pitches and low sounds.
So the facial expression has a lot, can really be a good guide, right? So if I'm going to have a, that looks like what, put it in your chat what that looks like to you. Does that look like a high or low inhalation? I'll try one, and then I'll what does this look like? All right, so you guys can guess what that looks like. And Zurin, can you give us another type of inhalation? We'll try and guess what. All right, cool. How about another inhalation? All right, and one more. Okay, cool. So I'm guessing. I got my guesses. What about you guys? I'm guessing you went from low, medium to high. Is that correct?
Totally. That's
Okay,
exactly what I
so
do.
do you feel the facial expression is really determines that, or
It
do you feel kind of
it
a different kind of opening?
I f- honestly I feel that connection with those nasal conchas. It might be by knowing as well, but however, if you want to feel all of them, then you can kind of breathe forward and then go in. Then you're opening up for all of them, and that's
Mm.
going to make a really crazy sensation here as well. But you don't normally do that, at least. But that's another way of just getting in there as fast as possible, if needed.
Yeah, that's super interesting. A lot of a lot of coaches or teachers, learn themselves and pass this on. Try and inhale something that's really pleasant, like you're going to
Yeah.
inhale the scent of a rose, right? Or
And
you
then you
wake
can
up to the
put in
smell of fresh coffee, right? So what kind of inhalation is that going to give us? Is that opening
normally
up everything, or what?
normally I would say that opens up the mid nasal concha. But again, some people do naturally breathe with a low one or a bright one. So it really depends on what they normally do. But I would say if it's, you're probably not going to go woohoo. That's a nice coffee. At least not that very often in the morning, right? So I normally would be the mid nasal concha for speech because you're not set up to sing at that point.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, well, I want to try this on with this inhalations. You guys can all try this as well. But so I'm going to try for this "Cry Me a River." Try
Mhm.
with a really high inhalation. Basically, I'm thinking the pitch first. I know my brain's already saying it's high. So I'm going to try and set up the inhalation a little bit and think a little bit of that emotion and see what happens. Cry me a river. So I
That's
felt like that actually helped me get the position prepared first.
yes,
So
sure.
we'll go for like an inhalation I'd use if I were singing, if I was on the operatic stage.
Yeah.
Cry me a river. And it does change the quality quite a bit.
Yes.
It just helps prepare the space in a way.
There was this fancy word in Italian. I really forgot it now, but where they talk about inhaling the pitch, and I think that's really what it's about as well, um, in the big picture. One thing is that we can hum it and we can do all these other things, but kind of inhaling it already when you hear it type of thing can definitely support that air structure that you need for these specific pitches. Hmm.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like that statement, that thought. It's it's so important. I mean, the way we breathe is so vital to our singing, right? Because the way we speak, and obviously we have to get air in and out of our body to survive, but when we're speaking and going through the day, we never think about how much air we're going to breathe in to speak or what kind of sounds we're going to make. It's just automatic, right? So
Yeah.
that's what we want to get our technique to as well is this just becomes more automatic. But these can be really great tricks to help you if you're struggling with a pitch or a phrase, to help you prepare that position even before you start singing. I think that's one of the reasons they say that in the old bel canto school is inhale the pitch because they're preparing even before they sing. They're preparing actually the inhalation. They're preparing the shape on the inside that's going to create the right
I see.
supra and subglottic pressure so that when the vocal folds then engage, they're already going to be on track. And this happens so often with singers. It happened to me. I'm guilty of doing it a million times, but of not being ready for that next interval, right?
I see.
That next pitch. I'm like, la, there is a
Yeah.
technique to actually
Super
take it up to the
stretching.
next pitch or have the little jump. But if you don't think a little bit ahead and concentrate on that pitch in your mind and set up the position, you're always going to be dragging something up. And it's
Mhm.
always much, 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 much more work for you as a singer than to inhale right, set it up, and then sing. It works so much better. At least that's my experience, and that would be a tip. So I like this approach. So
Yeah.
we inhale the right way, inhale for the phrase you're going to sing, in what style or sound color you're going to sing. You know it already. You know what it wants to sound like, or you want it to sound like. Yeah. Set it
Exactly.
up, and then let it go. Is this
And then
kind of
exactly, and then how we let it go depends on which one, if it's more on the la side or the ut type of a style, right? Or he hu again. So that's the second part of, as you mentioned, bel canto, if you may.
right? So that, but you got to know what you want. Basically, saying
Yes.
you need to know what you want before you start to sing, right?
You don't know which register you want to sing in. That's probably the most common as well. We see as with students that they do not know which register. They're like, so which register was that? I sometimes just ask them, and they are instantly, I don't know. So if they don't know, how is their brain going to react to this? We know as well that the brain reacts to different. The brain is sending if it's going to be a plosive or what type of a sound you're making. So already there, we cannot just hope for the best and then it's going to happen. We should know what we're doing a lot of the time. That's at least going to help us a lot.
Cool. I think Christine has a question, or it's just like
Is it
no.
just? It's just.
I'm trying to type something, but it doesn't work anymore. So I don't know
Oh,
why. But yeah, not really a question, but it's just that in my ears it sounds like. I mean, I haven't tried those different, breathing
mhm.
movements, and it kind of makes sense that it probably does change. Where the pressure builds up
Yeah.
mostly. but also it sounds like um, it really impacts where my larynx
Yes, it
positions
does.
itself.
Yes,
So,
and
and
even
of
how your
course, if you
diaphragm.
go like this, the larynx goes up, and if you
Of,
go like this, it goes down.
of
So that conditions the breathing, but also the place where the larynx is. I try to do, the Justin Timberlake
mhm.
phrase with a low breathing
Yeah.
type, but trying to put my larynx up, and it
But that's you
sounded
pushing
to
it
me like I
afterwards.
could do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's you pushing. Then that's why the onset is not correct. So if you knew already exactly what Philip said, if you know you're going up there, don't make it a stretch. There's no need for it. You already can set yourself off to succeed
mm,
instead of us working out to get there. You can
yeah, yeah,
always just hi, then you're already up
yeah,
there, right?
yeah.
Instead of us trying to control our larynx, that's what I think a lot of voice scientists are talking about when they talk about fatigue and stretch and strain. Is really that we're pushing it to go these places instead of just breathing in correctly and going up there in the right
Mm,
way. But
wow.
also, if
Yeah,
you breathe
for sure.
bright, if you keep on breathing in with a bright pitch, notice that it's the top of your belly that's expanding and not the bottom part. That's really
Yeah,
funny
that's
to see.
interesting because, as a vocal coach, I have a tendency to tell people to, really relax and let the air go as far
Yeah,
down as
of course.
possible. Um, but then, of course, I notice that when myself I sing higher pitches, I do have a tendency to kind of build up pressure a bit higher. So
Yeah, of
it does
course.
make sense. I'm still a bit puzzled. Uh,
It's many things. It's many
yeah,
things.
it's many things, and I don't want to mix up things and concepts, like
No,
the
no,
position of the larynx, the breathing, but it does make sense that, of course, they all work together. So
yes,
yeah,
exactly. Exactly.
interesting, a lot to investigate, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's super, a very good question, a very good direction of thought, Christine. And what Zurin's saying that there's bigger expansion up here if you breathe in higher. A lot
Mhm.
of operatic sopranos, female singers especially, they tend to have a lot more of their supporting activity or their
Yes.
airflow management in the floating ribs area, as opposed to the lower abdominals. So, but what I think is fascinating, if you really pay attention, I'll just back up here. If I do the smile, Mickey Mouse, hello, my name's Mickey Mouse, kind of inhalation, I do feel the expansion here,
Yes.
but at the same time, nothing changed on the relaxation of the lower abdominals, or that it's still a very low diaphragmatic breath, as they say. The diaphragm moved down just the same. I just I feel a little bit more expansion up here. So
If you take a good
so,
4-second breath, you should see as well that it's expanding there instead of expanding down.
yeah,
If you take, if you just keep on breathing and relax your belly muscles while doing it, of course, while inhaling as normally, you should see that it's expanding up top instead. Yeah.
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 So it's actually quite. We're trying to get always back to nature's optimal, right?
Yes.
And
Exactly.
the more
Exactly.
we try and control it, the more it kind of gets out of balance. So just remember, as you're doing this, observe and guide, don't do, because as soon as
Exactly.
we do it like gets in the way. And I love what you said about controlling the larynx. If you think of, there's so many little muscles here. We got the muscles in the pharynx. This is not what we're built to control consciously through conscious action. We can think, and ask and guide, but the more you adjust here, actually, generally, the worse singing gets. It just gets much more tighter. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of coordinations that work a lot better as soon as you let go here and just let it take over. It's that old spiritual Buddhist way of thinking. Just observe and guide, but don't do too much. So we
Exactly.
tend to be our worst enemies. So let's do a quick recap, Søren. So can you do me a favor? Can you pull up that graphic of what you're saying, the connection between the brain and your nasal passage for breathing?
Let me see if I can get it up again. Oh, yeah, we just go backwards, I guess, to make sure that it's happening.
Yeah, just so we get that, we can have another visual and connect those dots and talk about how
So
the mind body connection works there to help us prepare.
so when they are basically there as filters, if you don't know that already, to make sure we're not getting bad stuff um, inside our lungs, of course. And nose hairs is of course there for insects, not to put X inside there. I love to say that.
Wait a minute.
So it's going to be yay nose hair from now on. Yes.
I'm not seeing your screen yet. If you
Oh,
want,
I didn't share, of course. Oh, I forgot for a second. I'm so sorry. So yeah, ba-da-ba-dum. So these three filters are there, as I mentioned, for small particles, so they do not enter our lungs. And yeah, nasal hairs, which is not here, but is there for us not to get bugs inside our nose. But they all hit the same part back here, which is the funny thing why that these have so much to do with this different way of inhalation. But for some reason they do. You could say that it was the size of them. That would be another interesting theory why that the smaller one is giving us a brighter tone, right? Um, and I do not know how accurate this is size wise, of course, but we can hope that it's correct. But in general, when we breathe lowly in, we do get a lower sound. And yeah, when we do the mid one, which is more as for speech, um, and yeah, the bright one. So the best way is really to begin with just doing the full gesture of you doing a super high pitch with your nose as well, and facial structure like a mouse. And then the other one is what I call a relaxed breath or a thoughtful breath. So you're like, I need something now. I always, as much as possible, inhale with my nose, of course. Um, but but yeah, that would be the main one that we use daily. But some people do speak a little bit more up here, and they're obviously using their high nasal concha a lot of the time. And the same for the lower pitch voices, they're probably using the lower nasal concha a lot of the time. I see that at least with my students as well, that if they have a low pitched voice or at least baritone type of a thing, then commonly they do have a lower inhale as well. But what's making the lower one happen is that there's a nerve here that's kind of blocking these two, making sure that it's mainly coming through the lower nasal concha.
man, thanks for sharing that. That's super fascinating. I'm just curious now, for you, maybe if there we go. So for you as a coach, are do you have you just you've discovered this, not discovered, but researched this, learned this? Is it part of your thought process now with the singers
Yes.
actually where they're breathing in through their nose?
Yes, it is. I teach them this very, very early in the stage simply because otherwise they're too far, as I mentioned before, from the initial pitch that they're trying to create.
Mhm.
It will be impossible for the high nasal inhale and then do a really low pitch. It's going to sound funny. It's like, it's not, it's going to be more of the nasty sounds. Then it's not going to be anything near if they wanted a growl, for
Yeah.
example. Um,
I think that's. I mean, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to experiment with it. That's why we're here. We got a lot of great questions coming in here in the chat, so we'll take those. Also, just thinking, I've never really thought about trying to inhale, in the top upper
yeah.
concha of my nose, and I'm guessing most singers never have either, right? But and maybe some singers are thinking to themselves, "Do I always have to breathe in through my nose?" And but a
Yes.
lot of people don't realize that you can breathe in through your nose with your mouth open at the same time. So it's optimal breathing is actually breathing in through both, isn't it?
Um, Well, what we know last year, mid last year, there came a book. I really forgot the name of the guy, but you can watch him on the Joe Rogan experiment or what it was called, where he's talking about breathing. What we know now is that if we do not breathe enough through our nasal cavity, it will decrease in size. So it is without a question the correct way to breathe. I know that a lot of opera singers will now bash me for this, but really, I have practiced doing this and I can jump around on stage and do fully nasal breathing and having speed parts, whatever it may be. You can still learn to relax, even though doing crazy death metals or whatever it may be, and still actually inhale through your nose. If you do it with your mouth the whole time, those red lights in your face and so on, you get so dry in your oral cavity, you're going to drink 5 bottles of water instead of just half a bottle or one
Yeah.
bottle, whatever. That's just the fact. The more that you do this live and you know what it means to go up on stage on small stages as well as big, but that light is just so hot. It's like being down here in Bulgaria in the summer. So yeah, it's we have to inhale with our nose as much as possible. Why did it even happen that we have a nose next to our mouth? Well, as small cells, we only ate. But then what happened was we also ate stuff we shouldn't. So we started sniffing. Oh, can we eat that? Yeah, we can eat that. That's the first part. Then, oh, someone is trying to eat us. Now it's really easy for us to figure all of this out. So they came for a reason, these parts. It's not like now I can breathe with my mouth, but we learn this in the age around 3, then we start eating up what everyone is doing around us. And if everyone is inhaling incorrectly, like, yeah, it's been a good day, doing that type of a thing, then you will take that and do it as well. I saw it with my daughter as well. Up until the age of 3, she started up until there, she only breathed with her nose, and then slowly she started doing it with her mouth sometimes. And I was like, why is this happening now? But we're obviously just a big vacuum and want to be a part of the flock as much as we can.
Thank you. I like that. Definitely, I use the nasal inhalation all the time on stage, and
Yeah.
I haven't been practicing it in the same way you have, but anytime, I mean, it's all about really a relaxed, optimal inhalation and keeping your breathing really optimized. But anytime I can, I'll just breathe out, close my mouth, and most singers, professional singers, you'll see them doing the same thing. But I think it's a great suggestion for everybody to become more aware of that and use the nose for breathing more and more.